Lights Out spoilers, let's do it. Lights Out opens up in this textile factory where we meet this guy named Paul. As one of his employees is closing up shop, she turns off the lights and sees this figure. But when she turns the lights on, the figure's gone. So she tells Paul, I saw something weird, be careful when you're leaving. Paul, of course, doesn't really take her seriously, but then sees the figure himself. But it can only move in these dark spaces. Eventually, all the lights go out and Paul is killed. So now Paul's young son, Martin, is left alone with his mother. One day, Martin notices his mother acting strangely and talking to this unseen figure, and he starts to see the strange shadow always with her. Because Martin is so afraid of what he's seeing, he falls asleep in school, leading CPS to be called. And when they can't contact Martin's mom, they end up calling his half-sister, Rebecca. Rebecca reveals to the CPS agent that their mother, Sophie, takes antidepressants. Meanwhile, Martin is absolutely terrified to go home and tells Rebecca that their mom has been talking to a figure named Diana. And Rebecca's like, oh, she's doing this again. She used to talk to Diana when I was a kid too. Rebecca takes Martin home, but she and her mother get in a fight, and her mother reveals that she hasn't been taking her medication. We also learn that Rebecca's birth father abandoned them when she was a child. So Rebecca, now thinking that their mom is unstable, ends up taking Martin home with her. But that night, Rebecca ends up seeing this strange figure in the darkness in her apartment. But when she turns the lights on, it disappears. She investigates the area of her floor where the figure was scratching, and she sees the name Diana. She also sees a stick figure drawing that she remembers seeing when she was a child. So at this point, Rebecca is starting to realize that her mother might not be entirely crazy and Diana may be very real. Rebecca and her boyfriend Brett are going through Paul's office one day and they find a box of medical records. And in it, she discovers that when her mother was a child, she was admitted to a psychiatric hospital where she met a girl named Diana. And Diana had this weird skin condition that didn't allow her to go out in the sun. And these recordings reveal that they believe that Diana had the power to get inside people's heads and make them do things. And that Diana even influenced her own father to kill himself, which he did. And we learn that Diana died in the hospital's care while they were trying to perform some experimental treatment on her. So at this point, Martin was taken back to his mother's house by CPS. And while they're going to watch a movie one night, Sophie turns off all the lights purposely to make Diana expose herself. And she's trying to tell Martin, don't be scared, she's fine. But Martin, obviously terrified, runs back to Rebecca's. So the three of them decide that Sophie needs an intervention to make her realize that she needs to stop letting Diana control her. Sophie seems to get upset, but later slips Rebecca a note that says, I need help. So they decide that they're all going to stay the night and help her. And they rig all the lights doing stuff like this to make sure that they stay on all night. But of course, Diana cuts the power. Rebecca goes to the basement to try to get the lights to turn back on, and Martin follows her, and Diana traps them both down there. Meanwhile, Brett is attacked and almost killed, but manages to escape by flashing his headlights at her. There's this really tense moment while they're trapped in the basement trying to escape Diana, and of course they're running out of light. But Brett ends up leading the cops back to the house, and they go and free Rebecca and Martin from the basement. Now the cops see the shadow of Diana and try to shoot at her, but obviously she's not alive, so they don't do anything. And instead she kills them. So the three of them end up fleeing from the house, but Rebecca goes back in to get their mother. At this point, Diana reveals to Rebecca that Diana is the one that killed her father. He never ran away. And she did the same thing from Paul because Paul was helping Sophie recover from her trauma, and therefore Diana was going away. So Sophie comes downstairs as Diana has Rebecca cornered, and she realizes what she needs to do. She tells Diana that she knows that she cannot survive without her, so she shoots herself and sacrifices herself, saving the kids. It's a somewhat happy ending,